It's interesting that with this woman that you talked about in the beginning, you talk about how she's crouched down and she's looking down at the ground and all that. So it's interesting. In your rules, obviously, the first rule is to stand up straight with your shoulders back, right? Well, when you get, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated. In fact, there is no better word. When you get indoctrinated into the military, that's exactly what's happening. And guess what? You get taught. One of the first things that you get taught is how to stand properly. And you know what they tell you? Chin up, chest out, shoulders back. They make you stand like that. There's no coincidence to that, is there?
Not at all. Not at all. Well, it's a. You could say it's a dominant stance, but that's not the right way of thinking about it. Although it is a dominant stance, the reason to adopt it is not because it's a dominant stance. It's a competent stance. And competence tends to make you dominant, at least in hierarchies that are functioning properly. Because there are hierarchies, which is what I outline in chapter 1. I say the hierarchies are old. They're not socio-cultural constructions. They're not a secondary consequence of capitalism and the free market. All of that is absolute nonsense. It couldn't be more wrong. And as an indication of that, I point out that lobsters, whom we diverged from on the evolutionary front 1/3 of a billion years ago, have hierarchies, right? And that the neurochemical systems, the neurological systems that lobsters have that mediate their hierarchical status, run on the same chemical that the neurological systems that we use to mediate hierarchy run on. So that's just absolutely mind-boggling. But a lobster, like a victorious lobster, stretches out and adopts a more dominant pose because his serotonin levels go up as he becomes more and more victorious, and that governs posture. Well, and so to stand up straight with your shoulders back is to open yourself up to the world. You're not in the defensive crouch of a prey animal, technically speaking. And that is the circuitry that's governing posture. It's prey versus predator or something like that. And to stand up like that is to expose yourself to the world, but in a bring it on sort of manner. Not precisely combative, but let's say courageous. And your posture announces that. And it doesn't just announce that to other people. It announces that to yourself. And it can be one of those things that can start a virtuous cycle occurring, which is partly why it's taught in the military. You get these guys that come in, they're all slumped over, they don't know how to stand up, they're looking at their feet, their necks are bent. Like, even if they're good-looking men, they don't look good because they're all crunched over. You see people like this on the street all the time. They could be perfectly attractive, except they're completely huddled in. They need to stand up and stretch themselves out. And then they can breathe too. And that's a competent stance.